we're going to do sort of more of a restorative theme class today, using those towels, and then if we have time, using your yoga straps. So if you have a yoga blanket or a towel, you'll use that for a lot of what we're going to do today. And then just make sure, again, if you have a yoga strap, you have it nearby, just in case we have time to add in some strap stuff. We are going to start turning your blanket into a tube or cylinder. So I've already got mine set up on my mat. And basically, you want this tube to be long enough to cover the entire area of your upper body. Your hips, your butt will be on the floor. And then the rest of your upper body will be on this cylinder. If you have a thin bolster that works, you can do that, but you're going to want your blanket like this for the pose that we do afterwards. So if you do use a bolster, make sure you have your blanket set up this way for when we change. If you are really tall, your upper body is long, your towel isn't quite big enough to reach your entire upper body, use a block for underneath your head, just so the head is not hanging below your heart, but your head stays level with the rest of your torso. So we will be lying back on this. And before we start, I just want to make sure I've got everyone muted. So there we go. Okay. So again, lying back on your cylinder, kind of trying to get the edge of your blanket, your towel, if you're using a small bolster, up to the base of your spine. But again, your hips, your butt are going to be on the floor. And then this towel blanket should go up the full length of your spine. Mine is long enough that my head is on the towel, but again, if you're a little bit longer and your head is not supported by the towel, use a block for underneath your head. If comfortable, allow the arms to open out nice and wide. So a nice wide A position today, palms rotating to the ceiling. Give yourself a few breaths to adjust your body, making sure you feel stable, comfortable where you are. Maybe take the legs a little wider as well, the width of your yoga mat, so that the feet can rotate outwards, hips can start to open. Again, make any last movements, adjustments your body needs to find comfort in this position. Try to allow the shoulders to go heavy. So you start to feel the shoulders begin to form around the towel beneath you. Start to take big, deep breaths. Beginning the breath from the bottom breathing space in the low belly. Feeling the low belly expand like a balloon. Feeling the low belly release. Take about 4 or 5 breaths, directing your breath entirely into this low breathing space. Again, using the diaphragm to breathe just a little bit more by really accentuating the expansion of the belly, the contraction of the belly. After a couple more breaths, begin to expand your breath upwards so that the breath not only expands through your belly, but across your ribcage. And then taking the breath all the way upwards into your chest and collarbone. Starting the breath again, low belly. Feeling the breath expand upward, almost like air entering a balloon from the bottom, expanding all the way to the top. And then exhaling the breath back down. We'll be here another 10 breaths or so. Continuing to focus on this 3-part breath, the movement of the breath from the belly to the collarbone, the movement of the breath from the collarbones down through the belly. As you maintain focus on your 3-part breath, allow some of your awareness as well to begin to travel elsewhere throughout your body. Just another couple breaths here. Now to run your thumbs lightly across each one of your fingertips. Noticing the sensation of touch, pattern, texture. Begin to wiggle your toes. Feel the toes brush against each other, maybe the air sliding between the toes. Next, inhale, reach your arms overhead. If this is too much for the shoulders, then reach the arms out to the sides into a T. Stretch from fingers to toes, big inhale. As you exhale, bring the arms back down to a neutral position. Start to slowly bend your knees until your feet are on the floor. We're going to roll to one side, right or left, does not matter which side. And then from this side, we're going to change the position of your blanket. So you'll still keep your blanket or towel in that long cylinder, and we're going to move it now so that it's parallel rather than perpendicular to your mat. So this might take a little bit of adjusting and moving around, and then adjusting once we come back onto it. So we're going to roll back onto your back. And from here, we want to adjust the towel or the blanket so it's across the bottom of your rib cage. So you can kind of lift the hips, lift the ribs, slide your bum down, and then have that blanket again kind of across the bottom of the rib cage. This is where if you were on a bolster, the bolster is going to be too big because we want the backs of your shoulders and the back of your head on the floor. If you're on a bolster, you might feel those shoulders kind of floating above the ground. So we want to be able to send some weight into the backs of the shoulders. Again, the blanket across the bottom of the rib cage, maybe slightly higher towards the base of the shoulder blades is fine as well. And then the arms are going to go out into a T position. So now a little bit wider of an angle with the arms. Arms into a T. The blanket should be beneath the armpits. Legs could stay extended, or if your back is starting to feel a little bit, feel free to bend the knees. Focus now on the breath being a little more upwards in the body. So really focus on expanding the breath across the chest and collarbone. And we'll be here for about 10 breaths. And you're little about over halfway through here on this one. And see if the shoulders can maybe get a little heavier. Today, just using the blanket, the towel for passive stretches. Subtle, but easy on the body. Helps you to focus on sensation and breath. Start to slowly bend your knees, placing your feet flat to the floor. Lift the hips, slide them down a little bit, come into a teepee position, and we'll just be here a couple more breaths with the blanket underneath you. And now heel toe the feet in. Now once again, lift the hips, try to unweight the blanket. You're going to slide it down to your sacrum, the flat part of your low back. So now kind of turning this into a supported bridge position, sliding the blanket down so that it's across the sacrum, back of the shoulders, arms still on the floor. And then from here, we're going to slowly start to lift the knees up until the knees hover just above the hips. You can stay right there or extend the legs upwards for a supported shoulder stand, extending your legs to the ceiling. Hips on the blanket, legs to the ceiling. Arms could be downside along the hips. You can also take the arms a little out wider, whatever feels more supportive for you. We'll be here about 8 breaths. At any point you feel like you need to bend the knees, feel free to bend the knees and just hover the knees above the hips rather than fully extending your legs. Good, last couple of breaths here. Start to re-bend the knees. Lower one foot at a time to the floor. If it's comfortable for your low back, for a couple breaths, we'll extend both legs forwards. If this feels too much for the low back, just keep both knees bent with both feet on the floor. So this one can be a little intense for the low back, especially if you're having any hip issues, any low back issues, any sciatica issues. So listen to your body on this one. Keep the knees bent if needed. We'll just be here a couple more breaths, not as long as the other one. Go ahead, start to re-bend your knees until both feet are firmly on the floor. Once both feet are on the floor, again, lift the hips, engage the glutes. Slide the blanket out from underneath you. Just move it to the side. We are going to use it again, so keep it nearby. Roll your spine down, one vertebrae at a time. You're going to draw in the butt to the heels to the butt. Once the hips touch, let your knees windshield wiper a few times, side to side. And this is where you're going to grab your yoga strap. We'll just get in some leg stretches before we continue on with your blanket. So once you have your yoga strap, Draw both knees once again back into your chest. I'm going to start by placing your strap around the arches or balls of your feet. If you can get the strap around the balls of the feet, the area just beneath all 10 of your toes, you can get a little more range of motion on the ankles, a little deeper stretch for the ankles and calves. If that doesn't feel good or it doesn't feel possible, around the arches is fine. Once you have the strap in place, slowly start to extend the legs upwards to the ceiling. This first extension, just kind of testing where your legs feel, where you feel any tightness, any resistance. And then grabbing a hold of your strap with both hands, we're going to start to bend the knees in towards the chest. You don't have to draw the heels to the butt, but just think about drawing the thighs to the belly. And then you're going to try to keep the thighs attached to the belly as you start to send the heels to the ceiling. You're not going to straighten the legs quite as much as you would if the belly was not attached to the thighs. And then re-bend the knees, try to bring the belly or the thighs rather back to the belly. So to do this 2 or 3 more times. So I'll hug the knees to the chest, thighs to the belly. Keep the thighs attached to the low belly. Extend upwards through the heel. So it's almost like your legs were going to go over the head. And then again, re-bend the legs. And do it again. Try to keep pressing your low back into the floor the entire time. So we resist the urge to curl upwards through the low back. That'll transfer the stretch more into the low back itself and take it out of the backs of the legs. You're just going to do 1 more time. As you bend the knees back in, go ahead, let the knees release from the belly and just extend the legs up naturally for you. So a little more forwards. From here, we're going to slide the legs out into a nice wide straddle, as wide as it feels good for you against the strap. Let the strap completely support your legs. You might find just a slight pigeon toe on the feet if possible as well to help widen the low back. If it feels good, you can seesaw your strap side to side, rocking on the low back. We'll be here about 4 or 5 more breaths in this straddle. Start to slide your legs back inwards against the strap. You might feel a little resistance from the inner thighs. Once your legs come back together, keep the right foot in the strap, remove the left leg. You can bend the left knee, set the left foot down. If accessible, you're also free to extend the left leg forwards for a little bit more. Kick up into the strap with your right foot. And as much as you feel like you want to pull back and down on the strap to deepen your stretch, continue to kick up into the strap as well. So you're using some resistance by kicking upwards, stabilizing the hip, but also engaging the hamstrings. So we keep blood flow around the area you're stretching. To deepen, soften the elbows, drop back on the strap. Again, if you have the strap around the ball of the foot, take a big flex of the foot, and then you can kind of pull down on the ball of the foot to deepen the stretch for the back of the calf, the ankle. Couple more breaths here. Now transfer your strap into your right hand. Take the left hand onto the left hip for now. Start to slowly open your right leg out to the right. You might be able to use the right elbow on the floor to ground down so the arm doesn't have to work quite as hard. And the right leg will open out to the right. Left leg pressing into the floor. Good, just 1 more breath here. And now use the strap, bring your leg to center. Once your leg is at center, find that same kick upwards into the strap. Take the strap, into your left hand. Take your right hand to your right hip crease. And you want to think about the right hip crease drawing down and back. Keep the right hip grounded to the floor, and you're just going to take the right leg about 2 to 3 inches to your left. So not enough that you twist in the hips and the hips leave the ground. So think about the right hand kind of guiding the right hip to the floor as the right leg just barely crosses the body. For a little more, find a slight turnout of your right foot, so the toes kind of opening out to the right as the leg crosses. And that's going to give you a little bit deeper of a stretch in your IT band. Go ahead, take the leg back to center. Give it one more good kick up. And then let the knee soften so you can place the left foot back in the strap. Take a moment to reach both legs into the strap. Press the low back to the floor. And then from there, release your right leg from the strap. Again, feel free to keep the right knee bent or extend your right leg forwards. Now again, as we start to deepen the stretch, the leg reaching to the ceiling, you can start to soften the elbows. You can start to draw the leg back so the toes go towards the wall above your head. But even as you use that motion, think of kicking up against the strap as well. So a couple more breaths with the leg at center. Good. Now hold the leg at center. Take your strap into your left hand. Take your right hand onto your right hip. Think about the right hand pressing the right thigh to the floor. Slowly start to open your left leg out to the left. And again, you might be able to anchor the left elbow to the ground to help support the weight of the left leg. You can also, if you have the buckle on the strap, can wrap the strap around the inside of the elbow as well, so the hand's not having to hold it quite so tight. Good, one more breath here. Take your strap into your right hand, bring your leg to center. Once the leg is at center, set the hips first. So think about the hands or the fingers going into the left hip crease. Draw the left hip crease down and back, and then just take your left leg a few inches to the right. So again, we're not going into a twist. We're not crossing the leg all the way to the right. It's just a couple inches. And for a little more, try turning the left toes out to the left slightly so that it's more so the heel reaching to the right than the toes. And that might take it a little more into your IT band, the calf, depending on where you're tight. Couple more breaths here. Go ahead, take your leg back to center. Once it's center, we'll give it one more good stretch. And then soften your knee. And we'll take your right leg back up into the strap one more time. Both legs into the strap. Kind of hang out, soften here. Maybe don't grip the strap quite as hard. You might even rock the hips a little side to side. Get some blood flow into your low back. And then start to bend your knees. Remove your strap, set it to the side. Give the knees a good hug into your chest. Place the feet on the floor. Get some blood movement back into your hands. Open, close your fingers, circle out your wrists. If you're like me, you are death gripping the strap, so just take a moment to kind of release all of that tension. And then roll your body over to one side, again, whichever side feels most comfortable. Give yourself a couple breaths on your side. You were on your back, we had your legs above your head, so you might feel a little lightheaded or woozy when you come up to seated. So take your time and then slowly start to make your way up to seated. Once you get up to seated, we're going to change the shape of your towel or blanket now. So I've got a quite long, it's almost like a beach towel. And what we want to do is make it more into a long triangular shape than that tube shape. So I've got it folded twice so that it looks kind of like this triangle shape. We're going to make that a smaller triangle shape. So now I'm going to fold it about 3 more times, looped in, so that it looks like that, kind of like a flat roll. We want some height to it, so we can kind of adjust it as we go too. We don't want it to be too flat, but then we don't want it to be too bulbous either. So again, just kind of like that. Now that's going to go towards the top of your mat. We're going to use this shape quite a few times now. We're going to start coming into your basic tabletop position. You can have the hands in front or behind your towel, whatever works for you. We'll start with just a few rounds of cat-cow. Get some blood flow moving through the spine before we start holding some longer postures again. So take your time, do about 6 to 8 rounds of cats and cows. Good. And then maybe 1 or 2 more breaths of cat and cow. And then using your towel, we're going to do sort of a soft, basic version of a puppy pose. Walk the knees back slightly. We're going to place each one of your elbows about shoulder width distance apart. They can go wider depending on the width of your towel. Palms will come into prayer. Walk the knees back once again so you can start to let the head fall between your upper arms. So you can keep the hands forwards of your head, pointing towards the top of your mat. You can also take the hands behind the head to go a little deeper, maybe pressing the hips back to deepen as well. So options there, do what feels best to you. So don't think about this going into a really deep puppy pose. Again, you just want to let the head fall heavy between the arms. If possible, maybe press the hips, the heart back a little bit towards the thighs. Hands can go behind the head or stay forwards of your head. We're going to hold here about 5 more breaths. You might even be able to let the head rest on the blanket or towel as well, depending on where the positioning is, but you can always put a block underneath your head too if this is too much for your neck. Good, just a couple more breaths. Press the elbows, forearms down. Fingertips will point back forwards if they were behind your head. Shift the shoulders forward. We'll start to walk the knees back. You're going to come to Sphinx, lowering the pelvis to the floor. Once we get to Sphinx, we're going to move this blanket. So slide the forearms up, and then you're going to slide that blanket all the way down so it's just above your pelvis, kind of right underneath your navel. Good. Give yourself a little rock. If this is super uncomfortable for any reason, you can move the blanket higher up. So we're putting a little bit of pressure on the belly, a little bit of pressure on the hips and pelvis in that Sphinx. Staying on forearms, lifting the chest. Be here a couple of breaths. Good. About 3 more breaths in Sphinx, and then we'll start to come out of Sphinx. Think about breathing into the belly, so you actually feel the belly pushing against the blanket. So that blanket kind of massages into the low belly as well. Now we're going to move the blanket just a little higher up. You're kind of positioning side to side. Now it's just going to go about a couple inches higher up. So the bottom edge of the blanket is just above your hip bone. So now it's kind of more like center of your navel. And then from here, we're going to come into a shoulder stretch. So we'll start the right side. Left palm to the floor. Lift the left arm so that you can start to slide the right arm underneath you. And you're going to begin to lower the back of the right shoulder to the floor. You might be able to bring your head. You could bring ear to the floor, head to the floor, forehead to the floor. You can always place your head on a block as well if this feels like too much for your shoulder. And then from there, start to walk the left fingertips directly above you to the wall above your head. So you're lengthening the left arm straight forwards instead of out. And again, have a block under your head if needed for comfort on this one. Good, you've got a couple more breaths here. And now start to slide your left hand back until you can get some pressure at the left hand along the floor so you can maneuver using your left hand. We're going to slowly roll onto your right side. So you'll keep the right arm extended out to the right. Use the left hand to roll to your right side. And then you're going to reposition yourself so that blanket is kind of on the curve of your right waist. And then bend both knees. So the legs are somewhat stacked. You can do a loose stack as well, having the top leg just slightly forwards or longer than the bottom leg. So it may be more comfortable to have the leg completely stacked or kind of staggered. From here, your left arm is going to go over your head, over your ears, fingertips towards the floor, maybe onto a block. So we come into a side bend now, passive side bend. Right arm extending out to the right. You're lying on your right side with that blanket folded up underneath your right waist. Left arm overhead, fingertips to the floor, kind of like a rainbow. And then again, knees bent, stacked, loose stacked, or full stack. And again, if the fingertips can't quite touch the floor above your head, maybe you add a block under there so the arm can stay raised and supported, and the fingertips can actually rest on something so you don't have all of that pulling going straight into the arm. Be here about 5 more breaths. We'll stay pretty much in this position. We'll start to open the left arm into a twist. So allow the head to maneuver. So you can slide the right shoulder up from underneath you. Then you let this left arm extend back behind you. Readjust the legs as needed to be comfortable so the hips feel supported and stacked. Maybe place a block between the knees to square off your low back and hips. Gaze could turn towards the left hand if it feels good for your neck. So again, that blanket's still underneath the body, kind of lifting the rib cage, gives a little bit more to the twist itself with the blanket. Last couple of breaths in the twist. Now begin to bring your left arm back up and over. So you can bring the left palm back to the mat right side or left side of the mat now. Start to slowly unwind, sliding the right arm out from underneath you. We're going to return towards a Sphinx, so adjusting your body, coming back onto your belly. Again, that blanket just higher than the hip bones, so more across the navel area again. And now we'll do the other side. So you'll start extending the right arm forward, slide the left arm underneath the right until you can lower the left shoulder to the mat. Again, you can always place your head on a block if your head doesn't comfortably reach the floor. And then the right arm is going to start to reach towards the top of the mat. So it's almost like you were trying to bring the inside of your right armpit down onto the inside of your left forearm. Now begin to slide your right hand back down until the right palm can firmly press into the mat and begin to roll onto your left side. So again, we're going to keep the left side on the blanket so it sort of forms into the waistline. Bend both knees, either fully stack or loosely stack the legs. And then take your right arm over your head. Fingertips, water falling towards the floor above your head. Again, maybe place your fingertips on a block, lifting the hand a little bit so there's not all that weight on the shoulder. Left arm still extended out to your left. Head could always still be on a block as well. Now finally opening this into a twist. You're gonna start to turn your gaze up to the ceiling, slide the left shoulder out from underneath you, adjust the rib cage as needed, open your right arm out behind you. Keep the legs stacked if possible. Again, a loose stack is fine. You can also place a block between your knees. Gaze could fall to the right fingertips if it feels comfortable for your neck. Next, inhale, bring your right arm up. Start to roll back to your left side. We're gonna hold on your left side this time. Take a couple deep breaths in, long breaths out. Again, go slowly, be aware of any lightheadedness, dizziness. Start to press yourself up to seated. Use that blanket, shift it back so that it's perpendicular to your mat, and we're gonna have a seat on it. And shifting yourself back, cross-legged seat, butterfly, whatever feels most comfortable to you. Take your time to get there. Maybe give yourself just a little wiggle back and forth. Sitting on the blanket to help to elevate the pelvis, to allow the pelvis to tilt forwards, lengthening through the spine. Let your palms rest upwards on the knees. If comfortable, close your eyes. Begin to focus on your breath once again. It's time to inhale. Imagine the breath rising from the base of your spine, moving all the way upwards to the crown of your head. As you exhale, imagine the breath moving back downwards from the crown of your head all the way back to the base of your spine. Each inhale, feeling your sit bones rooting into the earth as your body grows tall like a tree, crown of your head rising up. As you exhale, feel yourself grounding as the breath moves back down. Next, inhale, circle your arms out wide. Bringing the palms up and overhead. Maybe gaze up to see your palms touch. Exhale, tracing your midline, letting the hands rest at the heart. Thank you all very much for joining me today. Namaste.